What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Dayman. Fighter of the night, man. Champion of the sun, Captain Tech, and today's subreddit is r/ProRevenge. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is a good show. Alrighty, this story is called I Got Fired. Employers' lawyers should have done their homework. I did. This happened to me about 20 years ago, while in college. I am being deliberately vague because, reasons. Background. I got a job basically office sitting on weekends. I showed up at 8 a.m. and every hour I checked over things, handled the occasional phone call, and then left when the 4 p.m. person arrived. Most of the time, I read, watched TV, or played games on my laptop. In the year 2000? I probably worked no more than 10 minutes of every hour unless something went wrong. It went on like this for years. The pay was decent, holidays were double pay, and I even had opportunities to cover weekday shifts when others were sick. One day, while I was covering the midday shift, my boss asked me to come into his office. He told me that the evening weekday position was going to become available that night. He offered me the position, which I accepted. I was told to punch out and return at 5 p.m. that night. The reason it went down like this should be obvious. Things went okay for a while. I showed up at 4 p.m., did the normal things, and then left at 12 a.m. when my relief arrived. It was a little more work, more call volumes, etc. Then, after 9 months, things started to go south. The daytime person developed a huge attitude problem and went from a nice person to a total Karen. She would complain about everything I did. For example, one time a system jammed up at a remote site and she called them. 5 hours later, I saw the jam was still there, so I called that site again to see if they were still working on it, or if something else was wrong because the woman on our end, who would be the one to help them, was leaving soon. They did have a problem, and so I hooked them up. My reward for making sure the problem got solved and not having to bother an upper-level employee at home on a Friday, just after having left work, I got yelled at because Karen complained that I had apparently ignored her log entry about the issue. My defense was ignored. The boss had me highlight important things on the log to verify that I had read them. Things plodded on for a while with this new normal. I tiptoed around Karen when needed, thankful for the fact I only had to deal with her for no more than 5 minutes. I did this stupid highlighting thing, and my log entry started getting more and more detailed, even referencing Karen's calls when I had to follow up on an issue that crossed shifts. The firing. The following summer, just after I crossed year mark, I went on vacation to visit some friends out of state. When I got back, after about a week, my boss came down after everyone had left and had me describe how I did a certain task which involved certain updates. I explained to him how I did it and so forth. He then told me that I had not been doing it at all and that he was firing me. I had transposed the date code of the English file for the French file, which was the previous one. The newest one had already been applied anyway, so nothing was wrong. It was just a reason to get rid of me. So I left the office. My state is an at-will employment state, which means that I can quit at any time for any reason, and my employer can terminate me at any time for any reason. The only exceptions were state and federal laws such as race, religion, etc. I thought I was screwed, so I just started applying everywhere I could. During my job search, I happened to accidentally stumble upon a link about employment law. Out of curiosity, I read it and discovered that my employer had shot themselves in the foot. In the employee handbook, there was a job security clause. What this stated was that they would never lay us off and such if our jobs were eliminated. We would simply be retrained and sent to fill an opening elsewhere in the company. It sounds good, but it resulted in them cooking up reasons to fire people to get around it. But their fancy, high-priced lawyers had missed something. In my state's laws, the ones passed by the legislature, I was screwed because of at will. What they neglected was case law, the ones determined by our courts. This site cited a case from the state Supreme Court that had ruled that a job security clause waived at will on the employer side, turning it into a just cause relationship. This means that they had to have a real reason to fire me, the revenge. With that in hand, I sought out a lawyer. After my consultation with her, I set about collecting my evidence. My former boss did not realize that I knew more about this program than he did, seeing as I ran the same software on my own computer and laptop. I experimented. The date of the file, which they tried to use against me, is baked into the version 2. I was able to demonstrate to my lawyer that if I applied the same update over and over, which my former employer stated would change the date every day, would, in reality, display the date of the file. I showed this by backdating my own copy by a year using the update archive available from the vendor. Next, I showed her how the task used to be automated. A script would snag the file and process it every day on its own. A change on the vendor's site broke the script. It was an easy fix, but no one bothered to do it because the guy who had written it retired. The fix involved deleting 3 characters on one line in the script. The task was also marked as only being a weekday task. In my firing, I was told how important this update was and so forth. If it was so important, why was it not done on weekends or holidays? The vendor pushed out updates on those days too, as I showed my lawyer the one from Christmas morning. And why had the automation not been fixed? With all that in hand, she contacted them. After presenting them with the law they broke and all the evidence I had collected, they were forced to settle with me. So in the end, their fancy high-priced lawyers did not do their homework. I did. Thank you to the wonderful librarians I have known in my life who taught me my information literacy skills. They paid dividends in this case. Edit 1. Obviously, the terms of the settlement are confidential and, as far as I know, still in effect. It was a good portion of my salary, though. I did also get unemployment during this time as well. I never found out how the reaction went down, as the main corporate office that would have dealt with this was in another state, and I never had any contact with those people. I imagine a new handbook was issued before they cut my check though, so I feel bad for those who remained. Karen's fate was sealed about a year later. I saw a Facebook post by a former coworker mentioning that his job with them had ended, so I asked for details. The company experienced a huge loss in revenue. As a result, Karen lost her job as the site I had worked in was closed. Of about the 50 of us that worked in that office, only 10 or so were moved to another location. Thankfully, most of the ones I liked were old enough to retire. It did not take a genius to realize that my termination was simply a layoff disguised as a firing. Yeah, job security is a thing you gotta be careful about, because if you have all your eggs in one basket and you get fired, you're scradoozled, my friend, because not every company's gonna have dummy lawyers that are dummy dumbs. This one's called Track Me, You Hardly Know Me. Kidding, it's called Track Me. Sure, I'll comply, but not easy. I am not a native English speaker, so please excuse all the grammatical and spelling errors. Also, mobile user. So, my former workplace is trying to get a hold of me. About a year and a half after I quit, they gave me a job offer that turned out to be a whole other job. Bad for them. It seems that they have a problem with the Skatteverket, the Swedish IRS. I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. I was trying. It all started one day when the company told me that they were installing GNSS tracking in our vehicles. They blamed Skatteverket wanting to know that we did not use them when off the clock. Well, that's kinda true, but in fact, Skatteverket only wanted to know if we did, and if so, how much. When I pointed this out to my boss, he went off on an angry monologue, stating that us low-level workers couldn't be trusted, and finishing with that all we did was trifle away our per-work hours. So the statement from the company that they had no intention to follow us in real time was bullcrap. The problem for our company was that our union had already banned the practice of following us in real time, with a few exceptions. The tracking device installed was easy to Google and thereby even easier to figure out how to manipulate. The biggest concern was it was tamper-proof, so no on opening it up. Well, since it used GPS/GLONASS as the only source for positioning, there was a simple bypass. After speaking to an old colleague of mine from the military, I ordered an antenna, $150, a Raspberry Pi, got my former colleague to find a good software, and created a .gpx with a track going on every road in Malta. Thereafter, I set the device to start via the 12-volt in the car and to simply tell the shielded tracker that I was driving around in Malta. The effect didn't take long to show. After a week, the boss told me my vehicle needed service. It did not. I knew when service was due. Another week goes by and it suddenly needs something else I can't remember. Both times they needed the car to go to another city, even though our regular service station was in our town. After a month, I got another car. The company blamed it on something with the lease. After that, they didn't say anything at all to me about cars or anything else until the day I quit. Last day there, when dropping off my last things, the boss straight out asked me what I had done since everyone else's tracker seemed to work properly. I told him I had no idea what he was talking about and went outside and laughed my ass off. Leaving the premise, I met a coworker who had always been really nice to me. So for about 2 boxes of snus, he got the setup for me. Until today, I thought this would be a petty revenge on the company that tried to illegally follow my whereabouts. But apparently, they had sent in our tracking information to Skatteverket and, well, they had some questions. Either their records were lies and they needed to go over all the records from the company, or they had to get all the paperwork from doing business abroad in before July. The rumor spread real quick, and now the union also has a couple of questions, somewhere along the lines of, "So you could track your workers in real time? We haven't signed off on this." In conclusion, had they only been upfront and told everyone what they were planning and got the union in on it, I wouldn't have cared. No, they chose the other way of doing things. Those are some major ethical violations in my opinion. Like as soon as you're off the clock, employer needs to know nothing about you. Out, gone, get out of here. This story's called Good Luck Paying for the Car. So this isn't my story. It happened to a friend of a friend. So exact details are difficult to get, but this is what I was told. For ease of story and to hide identities, the names I will use are Jack and Jill. Bit of backstory. Jack and Jill had been going out for nearly 5 years by the point of the story. A year prior, Jill lost her job due to the company she worked for being liquidated. Money got tight for Jill, so Jack offered to help by covering her car payments, monthly installments, road tax, insurance, and fuel. So she could put the money she got to rent and utilities until she got a new job and was financially stable. Jack had a fairly decent job, so it wasn't a strain on his income. A year goes by and Jill is still unemployed, but not through rejections. She got lazy and just spent all day doing nothing around her house whilst Jack was at work. One day, Jack gets off work early and decides to surprise Jill on the way back home. But as he is approaching her house, he sees another car in her driveway. He parks on the street and sneaks up to the house and looks through the window to see Jill with another man. Jack was pissed, but he didn't burst in there. He walked away, got into his car, and drove off. When Jack got home, he did a little digging and found out who the guy was through Facebook, and found she had been having an affair for half a year with this guy. He was now really pissed off and wanted revenge, and he knew the best way to do it. This is where the revenge comes in. Jill loved her car, even though she barely used it. So what Jack did was stop all the payments that were going out of his bank account and put them onto her account, as the car was in her name and it was easy to do. As the payments had only just gone out, he had to wait for the end of the month for his revenge to unfold. The end of the month comes and Jill's bank card is declined at the shops. She calls the bank up to find out what is going on. and they tell her she has gone overdrawn because the car payment's going out of her account. Jill phoned Jack and asked why the payment is coming out of her account and not his. Jack coldly replied, "'Cause I know you cheated on me and I'm not gonna pay for my ex-girlfriend's car," and hung up. Fallout of the revenge. She tried to get Jack to pay for the car, even got lawsuits involved. But as she was the sole owner of the car, it was declared he had no legal responsibility to pay for her car. As she couldn't afford her road tax or insurance, she couldn't drive the car, and eventually she got so far behind in the payments, the car was repossessed. To pay the debt, she had to get a minimum wage job, and now takes the bus to and from work. Man, stories like these make me feel really bad because she was dependent on him and she still cheated on him. What an idiot. But honestly, the biggest red flag is when she was perfectly okay with leeching off of him for that long without even putting any effort toward getting a job. Jeez, at least she got what was coming to her. Crippling debt. Alright, so ProRevenge didn't have any new stories really, so I'm gonna read a story from r/Today I Fudged Up because we haven't read from there in a while and I miss it. Well anyway, last story is called Today I Fudged Up by Slapping the Absolute Clot Out of My Girlfriend. Girlfriend was about to take a shower and was seriously getting her hustle on getting out of her kit. She was making proper freaking haste for the tub, and I realized that all her defenses were down. Note, in my household, bare asses are hunted down and terminated with extreme prejudice. I went for the mother of all ass slaps. It was completely undefended territory, and I was intending to create a masterpiece. I was aiming for that initial dull thwack, and the resultant perfect, satisfying vibrato, complete with concentric ass flesh ripples a la that glass of water in Jurassic Park. I made contact and immediately discovered the reason for her hurry. My girlfriend was on the second day of her period. I learned the term arterial spray from Dexter and have now found its southern companion. I was reeling. She was reeling. Did I say Bloody Mary 3 times in the mirror before spanking that ass? I couldn't remember. Fortunately, its trajectory as such was so that most of the menstruation creation spattered handily in the bathtub, including the clot, a penny-sized curd of uterine lining best visually described as Gumby's aborted cousin. Unfortunately, our bath mat did not escape entirely unharmed. Its cleaning was immediately and firmly relegated to boyfriend work. By the way, has anyone seen The Thing from 1982? Good movie. And no, that wasn't a comment from me, even though it sounds like something I would say. Wow, that story was definitely something. Oh man, this is why Today I Fudged Up is so good. You get writing like this. It's so good. But honestly, he got off easy because it could have been so much worse. So much. But can you imagine the panic after slapping her and just seeing blood splatter everywhere? And he just looked down half expecting to see her ass just freaking got clapped off. Well, that could be taken 2 different ways. Just like something else. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.